Okay, guys, I think there is critical mass to start the discussion, at least on the solutions of quiz 4. So it was a very straightforward quiz in the sense that the actual problem statement that I wanted to give would have been probably too much within the time limit of the quiz. So I gave you a part of the problem, and the scenario is this, that base stations are deployed along the roads, and users are also located along the roads, and we are only observing one road. Okay, so this is just a part of the network, one user, its nearest base station, and we are interested in the probability whether this user link to the nearest base station is blocked or not. Right. So, couple of things that have been given is HV, which is the height of the blockages. HB is the height of the base stations, as shown in the figure. Some other parameters have been given. They are that the fact that the vehicles, the users, and the base stations all are Poisson processes. So we have lambda b, which is the intensity of base stations, right? We have lambda v, which is the intensity of blockages, and we have been given for the moment a distance d, which is just the distance between the user and its nearest base station. Of course, in the random network, it will be a random variable. Okay, but for the purpose of the first question, A, we have to express x, right, in terms of d, where x is the distance within which, if a blockage exists, the base station user link will be blocked. Right. So this should be fairly obvious to you. I mean, if you directly look at the figure, you see that if a blockage is present here, it will not be blocking the link between this user and its base station at a distance of d, right? It's only within this distance, if a blockage is present, it will create a blockage, right? And if you go back to your basics of similar triangles, we have x by d is equal to hv by hb. So this implies that x equal to d times hv by hb, right? So that's fairly straightforward, and that's a very, I mean, easy thing to do, right? Okay, then using the above, we have to prove that if the nearest base station is blocked, all the base stations on the same side as the nearest base station are blocked. Okay, there are a few ways to do it. Some of you, I think, have done it by proof by contradiction. That's also fine. I mean, let's say the second nearest base station or any other base station apart from the serving base station, if it is at a distance of d2, so this is the distance to any other base station apart from the serving base station, right? Then it has a corresponding x2, which is d2 hv by hb, similar to 1 above. So if this is 1, so this is similar to 1, right? And you can start by assuming that this base station is not blocked, right? And that means that from this user, within x2 there is no blockage. But since d2, we have d2 greater than d, this implies x2 is greater than x. That means we have a contradiction that if in x2 there is no blockage, in x there will be no blockage because x2 is greater than x, which contradicts our first assumption that the serving base station is blocked. So this is again fairly straightforward. In case if you have proven it with some other kind of argument, but it's fine, it's not a big deal. Okay, then comes the part C, which is a bit more interesting. It says that what is the probability that the user observes an line of sight link to the nearest base station. Okay, And in this case, you would have to actually average out on all the distance distributions of this base station. It should have been clear, but even if it was not clear, it becomes very apparent from the second part of the question, which says we have to comment on the asymptotic behavior of this probability when lambda b tends to infinite and lambda s tends to infinite. So the probability that the nearest base station is blocked, yes, is equal to the probability, or that's an expected value over all d, right, of whatever we have derived, which is exp. Okay, by the way, we have said that the probability that there are no vehicles within this distance x is simply e to the minus lambda v times this stuff, because it's also a Poisson point process. So it's exp of minus lambda v d hv by hb. I hope, I mean, it is clear how I got to this part, right? Is it clear for everyone? If it's not, please interrupt me, okay? This distance d is the distance to the nearest base station, which we know how it is distributed. So we have exp of minus lambda v hv by hb, some distance x, right? And then we have the pdf of x, which is 2 lambda b exp of minus 2 lambda b x dx, of course, where the distance can be anywhere between 0 to infinite, right? So we have 2 lambda b outside, right? And we have exp of minus lambda v hv by hb plus 2 lambda b times x, right? And we divide it by lambda v hv by hb plus 2 lambda b and evaluate it from 0 to infinite, right? This stuff. I mean, it's not mod, it's just evaluated at two things. Okay. At infinite, it becomes 0. At 0, the numerator becomes 1. So our life is very easy. We have 2 lambda b by 2 lambda b plus lambda v times hv by hb. Right. So the question is, what is the probability that the user observes an line of sight link? So this is basically the probability that any given random user observes a line of sight link to the nearest base station. Note that it is just about the link. I mean, you cannot change much here. You cannot increase, for example, the transmit power or increase the antenna gain. Anything you cannot increase in order to improve your line of sight conditions. It's just geometrical limitation that you have. Okay, this term we will come across it a bit later when we do our network analysis based on this deployment along roads. But for the moment, this is a limit of your LOS capability. There are a couple of few follow-up points when. So if I call this PL, or probability in being in line of sight, so we have when lambda b tends to infinite, we have PL tends to 1. Right. This is fairly straightforward, because you see that, I mean, not only mathematically, numerator and denominator both go to the infinite by infinite, and if you do, if you divide by lambda b on numerator denominator, you get 1. Right. It's also intuitively good, because when there are infinite number of base stations, you have a 1 probability of being in line of sight. Okay. When lambda s, or I think there was lambda s or lambda v, I don't know. Yeah, lambda v, I guess. Lambda s is probably mistyped. So lambda v tends to infinite, PL tends to 0. Which means if all of your network is covered with vehicles, you would have a chance of, I mean, no chance of line of sight. It would be always obstructed. There is this additional thing when HV equal to HB, right? When HV equal to HB, then PL becomes 2 lambda B by 2 lambda B plus lambda V. Okay. By the way, before going there, these kind of things also follow from HB and HB, right? So when, for example, HB tends to infinite, this thing follows, and when HV tends to infinite, this thing follows. Okay, and it's also follows from our intuitions as well. If the base stations are at infinite height, you will always be in line of sight. Of course, you will not get any power, but that is not the concern at this moment. When the vehicles are of very large height, you will also get no line of sight. Nevertheless, when we have equal heights of base stations and blockages, I have made this subscript V to term vehicles, but in the figure I have drawn a tree just to make this point that the blockages can be of similar heights as of base stations. It can in fact be of larger heights than base stations. But in this special case, when they are of equal heights, the probability of line of sight depends on the relative density, but the density of the base stations twice as much as the vehicles. Can someone try to see why this is true? I mean, why it is not lambda b by? I mean, deriving the formulas for stochastic geometry is interesting, and you can always plot graphs. But it is those intermediary intuitions or intermediary inferences that you can derive from the network, or mathematical inferences, that I think make this study a bit interesting. So when the heights are equal, base stations are of equal heights as the vehicles, then you would assume that okay, it should depend on the fractional locations of the base stations vis-a-vis the vehicles. But it seems that it is twice as much. Can you tell me why?
Sir, two things.
Yeah.
I accidentally used. Can you scroll up a bit? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I accidentally used e to the power minus lambda bx, which is for two directional line processes, and I
Mm-hmm.
ended up with the a type of expression that you were saying, that the fractional one. Anyway, since it's one directional, it should be 2 lambda b. But
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, on the contrary, that if the heights are equal, then
Mm-hmm.
it should always be blocked, right? If it is 2 lambda.
Not. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, but you are missing one part is that there has, I mean, this value just dictates there has to be one such vehicle. Okay. If there is a vehicle, of course, there will be always be blocked. This quantifies whether there is a vehicle or not.
Okay.
Are you getting my point? If you have a user here and a base station here, of course, if there are of vehicles are of equal heights, if a vehicle is present, you are always blocked. But this probability is not one because this probability dictates whether there is such a vehicle or not.
But that should be then lambda b by lambda b plus lambda b.
That's a good question. Why do you think it should be?
I was thinking, theoretically speaking, if we think of this as a two-tire network where the blockage is of another tire, and if we
Mm-hmm.
connect to the blockage, we are not getting connected to tire one,
Mm-hmm.
then the entire thing follows like that, right? But yes,
That's true, but it's a bit different in this sense. Okay, how do I say? Statistically speaking, we are only considering the event that there is a vehicle within this guy. Okay, if you are looking at the average number of vehicles in the network as compared to the average number of base stations, that's a different thing. Okay, but here we are looking at the statistical occurrence of this event that there is a vehicle within the base station's distance. I'll give you a similar, probably I don't know if the analogy holds, but I'll give you a similar problem. So the problem is this: if you have an independent random variable x between 0 and 1, right? So there is x between 0 and 1, and then you have another independent random variable y between 0 and 1, right? And I am interested in x plus y, yeah, the expected value of it. Okay, and suppose they are uniform. Okay, suppose both of them are uniform. Yeah. So what you would expect, the expected value of x plus y would be 1, right? I mean, expected value of x would be 0.5 and expected value of y would be 0.5. But if I now tell you that I am interested in x plus y, where y is allowed to be within 1 and x, again, uniform. Okay. This now becomes an altogether different problem. So here we are observing a similar thing. Although the number of vehicles present in the network with respect to the number of base stations present in the network are like this, the probability that there is a vehicle within the distance of a base station is a bit different question. Are you getting my point or hint?
Yes.
Yeah. So try to solve this. Of course, you will get something which is more than one because y tends to be outside x, which means x can be anywhere between 0 and 1. Y statistically is dominant towards 1 rather than dominant towards 0. So that's the skewness that this type of coefficient brings. Okay. But that's a different case. Maybe the analogy doesn't hold, but maybe does it. I mean, it holds. That's the point that I tried to make. Okay, this brings me to the final question, which is a bit more interesting because there are some nuances of wireless networks that will come in, or wireless trans receiving, and a bit independent of stochastic geometry. So the fourth question asks that assume that the base stations operate in the millimeter wave band where the users receive negligible power in case of a non-line of sight state of the serving base station, right? So again, if I draw this network, and I'll spend a bit of time explaining this or discussing this because I think this is important in any other network if you go to, specifically which are probabilistically in the signals change. So we have some power, let's call it PL, or PL I have used for something else. So PR is simply the transmit power, right? And the distance, let's call it D, or let's call this R. So R is basically square root of D square plus HB square. So we have R to the minus alpha, yeah, some path loss constant, some gains, right? So this is the received power when there is line of sight state, and it is 0 when it is in non-line of sight state. Okay, so from here I'll give you two options and I'll open the floor for discussion amongst you, and tell me which option is a correct way to characterize this network. So we have option 1 and we have option 2, where what we are interested in is an SINR coverage probability, or for the matter of this discussion, let us only focus on SNR coverage probability. I mean, I should have given you the SNR coverage probability because SINR in general is a bit difficult to characterize because each of these, I mean, you have to condition on individual interferers being blocked or not. I mean, for example, if the first one is blocked, you know that all the others from there are blocked. The second one is blocked, you have to condition on, I mean, there are a lot of complications, but let's, for the moment, before going to this question, let's focus on SNR. What we want to do, the question is, what is the SNR coverage probability? Okay, in option 1, what I would say is the average received power for me, or PA bar, let's say, is PR times the probability that you are in line of sight, given that you are in a distance of R, or let's call that at a distance of D because HB is rather fixed. This is the average received power because you receive 0 with 1 minus PL of D, right? So my SNR at a distance of D is simply PR PLD, right, divided by N0. and I calculate my SNR coverage probability, which is PC, is as the probability that the SNR is greater than D. Sorry, gamma. Yeah. In this case, what you arrive at is some functions. I mean, if you use, I mean, to approximate your performance, you can always use Rayleigh fading. But in general, you should be using Nakagami for the millimeter wave. But in general, you would get some exponential terms, right, which average out the fast fading, and you have still remaining the random variable D, and you take an expectation value over D. Okay. So what does this do? It calculates an average received power where you have averaged out the blockages, right? And what you have found out is that with that average received power, you are interested in whether I am getting inside coverage or not. Okay. I think option 1 is fairly straightforward to understand. The option 2, however, someone says no, that is not that is not how my network behaves. It behaves in this way, that if I am at a distance of D, right? So at a distance of D, I am receiving a power PR, and I would receive an SNR, which is PR by N0, right? In case I am in line of sight, so I call it SNRL. So I will calculate PCL, which is probability that my SNR, when I am given that I am in line of sight, is greater than gamma. Let me call it something like this, given that LOS. Yeah. And I'll calculate this coverage probability for that distance D, right? Average it out on this value of D. We'll call it PCL or PCL of D. Yeah, it will give you the overall PCL, and my overall coverage probability is actually coverage probability that given that I'm in line of sight multiplied by the probability that I am actually in line of sight plus the coverage probability that I am in non-line of sight, which is actually 0, multiplied by 1 minus the coverage probability in non-line of sight. Yeah. Now these two actually are I mean, I don't know if I have unnecessarily complicated matters, but these are mathematically speaking, it's just the expectation of the function versus the function of the expectation, but it changes how you look at this network. So can you tell me which option you guys would have done if I had asked you to calculate the SNR coverage probability? First of all, is it clear that they are different? Yes, Arnav, you were saying something?
Yeah, I was telling the second option.
You were prescribing the second option. And why do you think that it is true and not the first one?
Not, I'm not saying first is not true, sir, but that is how I approached
Okay,
that
I see.
part of the question.
Any other comments? I would like others to just chip in. First of all, in case anyone thinks that both should evaluate to be the same value, please feel free to express that. But in case you think that they are different approaches and they will evaluate to different values, which do you think more accurately characterizes the network?
Sir, I think option.
Sorry?
I think option 1 should be more accurate.
So one guy has there, one guy has there. Okay. And why do you think option 1 would be more accurate?
Sir, I was thinking of this problem and I thought like this. I'm not sure. I'm not saying right away that option 2 is wrong also.
Any other viewpoints?
Sir, in this, basically, can we say like difference is that for first case, I am condition my like my SNR is already considering the probability that it is a line of sight. But in
Mhm.
second case, I am considering it like after the fact. Like I am getting some SNR. Now I am
Mhm.
considering conditioning it on LOS part.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
taking it like after the fact. Like I'm receiving this much now. Is it line of sight or non-line of sight?
Mhm.
So, sir, I think then option two, because it says that like negligible power is there. So, I
Mhm.
think like for option two, after I'm getting my SNR, then maybe I can condition it on the fact that it is line of
Mhm.
sight or non-line of sight.
Mhm.
Yes, and
What you are mentioning actually gives rise to something I would call an option three. I didn't think about this. So option three would be something like probability that SNR that you are getting in line of sight to be greater than gamma, given that you are in line of sight at a distance of d, multiplied by the probability that you are in line of sight at a distance of d, and take an expected value over d. Was it this something you are mentioning?
yes, sir, yes, sir.
Hmm. 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 Yeah. So, okay, the thing that I wanted to express here is that there are different types of wireless communication services. Okay. Suppose you are interested in a service which is very short-lived, right? Which means that you want to maybe know your location, or maybe you want to send out a distress signal, right? Or suppose your user is not a mobile user at all, it is, for example, a wireless sensor alarm, right? Which means these are the kind of low latency kind of services, which means their request to service to the actual service beginning is a very low one, and the service itself is a very short lived one. Okay, what it means is that in that case, what you are interested in is that when you have requested the service, yes, when you have requested the service, whether my signal is blocked or not, that's all you are interested in, right? In that case, at a distance of d, yeah, you will have some kind of SNR coverage probability given that you are in line of sight, right? And I mean, this is of course as a function of d, and you have a probability of being in line of sight as a function of d, right? And you take an expected value of d like that. On the other hand, the people or the services, the people who are running services which do some kind of signal combining, which means that on an average you would want to achieve some kind of data rate, or on an average you want to achieve um, some kind of signal coverage, right? In that case, your service duration is a bit more than your dynamic vehicular blockage, right? What it means is that I'll give you instances why this might be important. Okay. In that case, I'll explain it first and then give you the application. The explanation is this, that it doesn't matter really if you are temporarily blocked, which means you shouldn't be calculating this guy. What you must be interested in is the average power, where by average I mean averaged around realizations of blockages, right? So a vehicle might exist at this instant, it might disappear in the second instant. By disappear, I mean in the terms of point processes. Of course, it doesn't disappear, it moves away, right? But in across instants, your vehicular realizations might or might not block your particular link. And accordingly, what you are interested in, averaged on these realizations of blockages, what is the signal power you are getting? And using those signal power, you characterize the performance of your network. Okay. As an example, how do I say, an application, suppose you want to you have a user which wants to connect to a base station in millimeter wave, right? And there are two options for this guy. One is on sub 6 gigahertz rat, and the other one is on millimeter wave rat, right? And if it follows an instantaneous, by instantaneous I do not mean instantaneous with respect to the fast fading, instantaneous with respect to the blockage realization. So if it does a lot of measurements like this, lot of measurements to average out the fast fading, but instantaneously there is a blockage present. By the way, fast fading is a much more agile random variable as compared to the blockage. Then it would be probably, in case of blockage is present, it would probably say that, okay, no, give me sub 6 gigahertz rat, right? On the other hand, it might be a very bad idea to do it in case the number of blockages are very few. Okay, although network wide the probability of connecting to millimeter wave remains same, because very few number of users would be actually observing those blockages. But conditioned that you are one of those data points and you are not a statistic, which means you are one of these users, instantaneously it might be not so good idea to calculate your association probability or do your association mechanism based on instantaneous received power, instantaneous in terms of blockages. It might be worth to do a bit of more measurements to see what is the blockage environment like. Is my blockage too dynamic? That means it disappears in the next instant. In that case, PA bar is probably a better idea or better measure of facilitating the association. The point that I'm trying to make is that both options, there is no incorrect option. It is how or what kind of service you are running which changes how you observe the system. Okay. Suppose if I tell you that so if I tell you that you have two values, okay, of a random variable x and y, sorry, of a random variable x, it takes on two values, let's say 0 and 10 with probability 0.5 and 0.5, right? And I define a service, right, which says that your success, so the probability of success is that if your observed value is more than 0. So if you have any positive value, you are successful. Yes. In case this, if you are looking at instantaneous values, of course 50% of the time you will be successful and 50% of the time you will be unsuccessful, right? That is a more accurate characterization of the network. That is basically what option 2, or as Weber mentioned, option 3 does. By the way, option 3 is a much more better way to put option 2. Okay, don't really focus on this one probably. That makes the point more clear. Okay, so in case you are doing option 3, you would say that 50% of the times I am successful, 50% of the times I am unsuccessful. However, if you are saying that, okay, I take x bar, which is 0.5, which is 5, and calculating my success based on that, you would say that I am always successful. Is this clear? That's the basic difference, right? But if your service lasts so long that it observes enough number of such instances and enough number of such instances, maybe this is a good way to go, in case, because it naturally simplifies your derivations, right? In your option 1, you just find out the average power received and do your classical analysis that you have done before. But a bit more nuanced approach, which means that you put this probability of being in line of sight inside your SINR analysis. That is probably this way to look at it. It gives you a bit more, a bit different insights into the network. Is this part clear? The summary is, if your service is running long enough such that it averages out the vehicular blockages, you can proceed with average power association or average power SINR analysis or SNR analysis. But in case you are looking at services which last very infinitesimally small time of length, small length in time, then what you are interested in, whether you are instantaneously blocked or not, you really do not care about the overall blockage characteristics. Okay. I hope this part is clear, right? Any questions, queries, concerns? If not, we can go to the calculation of this fourth question, which says that, by the way, in the question, if you have done either way, I give you marks, because I have not discussed these kind of things beforehand. These things appear a lot of times in such analysis. Okay, one of the times that it appears are industrial IoT networks. So in industrial, I'll do a case study on this in a later part of the course. So in industrial IoT networks, or example, right? So example can be this. Suppose you have a factory floor. So your factory floor, if I draw it By the way, in stochastic geometry analysis, always assume a circle. If you start with a square or rectangle, things become very complicated. So in a factory floor, there is a controller. Let's call it controller node, and there are device nodes, or these are terminal nodes or TNs, and this is your entire factory floor, right? So such kind of model, by the way, a disclaimer, we at IIIT Delhi are doing a project with Nokia Bell Labs, who want to define these industrial IoT networks, and this is the model that we started with. So what they had is a design for a factory floor where these terminal nodes are nothing but cyber physical systems, right, which can be like robots, right? If it's a manufacturing floor, they have to take things from one part of the assembly line and go to another part of the assembly line. If it is a storage kind of facility like that of Amazon or some warehouse, the terminal nodes have to basically retrieve some packages from some part of the factory floor to some other part of the warehouse, take it to the other part of the warehouse. The control nodes send out some control signals to these terminal nodes, yeah, and this kind of information are of URLLC type. So what it means is that within 1 millisecond, whatever this control node is trying to send to this terminal node, it can be very short packet transmissions which says, okay, stop operation or start operation or change operation, some things like this, which can be as low as a few bits of information. So within 1 millisecond, you have to transmit, or successfully these terminal nodes have to receive this packet from the controller node with a very high degree of reliability. So the specification from them is about 7 degrees of reliability, which means your reliability or packet drops would be less than 1 in 10 to the power 7, right? So in this kind of transmissions, even in the mid band, which is about 2 dot, so you can think about a frequency which is greater than 1 gigahertz but less than 6 gigahertz. What they have found out that if these guys do even omnidirectional transmissions, big blockages such as either pillars, or they can be, for example, some structure of the factory itself, some, I don't know, moving machine or something. These type of blockages impact this performance. Okay, so again, the type of information that this controller node wants to send to these terminal nodes and the characterization of the performance of this network would be similar to what we have seen before, which means if it's a URLLC kind of a packet transmission, you are interested in whether my current transmission is impacted by a blockage or not, whether this blockage moves and this line of and this link becomes back in line of sight is a secondary matter of concern, right? In that case, option 2 and option 3, as I discussed before, are good ways to model the performance of this network. So these kind of by the way, the discussion would not be complete without other type of services. So suppose it is continuously transmitting some kind of packets which is probably I don't know, some video transmission on how to or updated map of the factory floor, which is continuously getting transmitted. In that case, the application sustains for longer than the link blockages, and in that case, the devices combine the signals. What it does is, if a signal fails, which means if there is a blockage, this signal fails, and if the blockage moves, if the signal again passes. What this device does is collects the data that this red link has provided and collects the data the green link has provided, and its performance is characterized in the total assembled amount of data which he has gotten. And this total amount of data is naturally averaged out in terms of this blockages, right? In that case, the characterization is in terms of option 1. Okay. Any comments on this or concerns? Okay, if not, then we come back to the question, which says that we assume that the base stations operate in millimeter wave bands, and in non-line of sight there is no signal at all, conditioned on D equal to R, what is the coverage probability of the I have mentioned SINR coverage probability, but if you have put SNR, that's fine. That was actually the intention. But if you have written 2 or 3 lines of deriving the SNR coverage probability, that I will give you the marks for that. Don't worry about it. So we have transmit power PT, antenna gain G, path loss K and alpha. So what you have to do is simply probability that the SINR is greater than some threshold, and if you have put the probability of being in line of sight here, that is fine. If you have put the probability of being in line of sight here, that is also fine. But if you also have done option 3, which is a SINR greater than gamma given D and probability of line of sight given D and expected value over D, that is also fine. And as I mentioned, depending on the type of service, all these options are possible. Any questions? Otherwise, we can move on with the whatever we were discussing before. No? Yes? Okay. Yeah. If it's fine, then we continue our discussion on the Poisson line Cox processes. And an interesting thing which I missed explaining. Do you remember? Does anyone remember a theorem that we, or a property that we derived of this Poisson line processes was the number of lines crossing a compact convex set. So the number of lines crossing or hitting a convex set. I call it a compact convex set because the boundary points are also included. So it's a compact convex set. Of course, it might be a tangent or something like this. So the number of lines crossing a compact convex set, I had derived it and also shown why it is Poisson distributed. Does anyone remember that it is Poisson distributed with a parameter equal to?
The parameter is proportional to the circumference on the perimeter.
That's correct. Yes. So now if I tell you that there is this network of Poisson line processes and I am interested in one of the lines, yeah, and suppose my origin is located here, right, and I am interested within a distance of, let's say, D or 100 meters or whatever D can be, right? What I am interested in is how many lines cross this 0 to D. Again, to make it, yeah. So how many lines cross 0 to D, right? If my PLP, so we have a PLP of intensity lambda L. By the way, remember that lambda L is the intensity of the Poisson point process of the half cylinder, points distributed in the psi D plane, right? If you remember the previous class. So lambda L is the intensity of the Poisson point process in the psi D plane, which creates a network of lines which we call Poisson line process. And what we are interested in is the distribution of the lines that are crossing 0 to D. Right? Can anyone tell me how? So probability that the number of lines equal to n will be?
Sir, can we say that if there are n points, then the maximum number of lines?
Sorry?
Can we say that if there are n points,
Mm-hmm.
then the maximum number of possible lines is NC2, or does it not look like that?
That's a good, interesting point. And what you have mentioned, has given me an idea of a short exercise. I'll come back to that exercise after this, discussing this point. Okay. For the moment, let me note it down. Okay. I'll just write NC2 and give you the short exercise after this point. Okay. Okay. So for the moment, we are interested in the distribution of the number of lines, which is n, right? And as you mentioned that it is Poisson distributed, so can anyone tell me what would be the expression for this?
So that 0 to d and 0 to 2 pi, between 0 to 2 pi and 0 to d.
Yeah, there's not 2 pi, it's only the line, right? So only
Yes, so
the line.
e raised to minus lambda L times d.
Mhm.
Lambda L d power to the raised to the n by n factorial.
Right. So this is what even I believed when I began with this field. But as it turns out, so suppose if I give you a bit more changed or modified version of the question. So if I tell you that instead of looking at this line, right? If I look at an infinitesimal rectangle, yeah, of width dx, which is very, very small, dx tends to 0, would your answer change?
So then this dx area I would have to consider.
So remember that the area doesn't matter, right? The circumference matters, or the perimeter. I mean, in any case, the
Then,
area of the line would be 0. Right? Yeah, Arnav, you were saying something.
so then maybe in place of D, we'll use twice of D.
Exactly, right? So, do you think you would want to change this answer? Because dx tends to 0, by the way. Dx tends to 0 is exactly the line. So the proposition, and this I have verified with simulations, you can verify at your home, or quote unquote, the perimeter, and we will be using it in our network analysis. So it's an important point to make. So the perimeter of a line, if I can define it, so that's why I put it under quotes, is equal to twice the length of the line, which is going from, if you consider an ant going through the line from one side of it and coming back to the other side of it. So this is the proposition. I mean, you can prove it mathematically as well, but the simple thing would be to just do the simulation of Poisson line processes and find out whether it matches with this or matches with e to the minus 2 lambda LD and 2 lambda LD. So the fact is that it matches with the 2D, and the perimeter of the line is actually twice of D. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but what is the reason? Like, why am I considering that dx part?
Yeah, I mean, dx part is even if dx tends to 0, right? Even if dx tends to 0, that means we are looking at the limiting case of the line. So even if dx is 0, your line has a perimeter of twice the length. Okay.
Yes, so
It should.
that I understand. I'm saying that why am I considering like two lines here? Why I'm not considering simply that 0 to d line only.
Yeah, so that's the part, right? So the perimeter of this line would be defined as twice the length of the lines. The fact is that you can verify it with doing these simulations, which means you generate points in the psi-d plane and look at a line in the Euclidean plane and see how many lines fall through it. Okay. Why am I considering this dx in this explanation? Is that if I put even a very, very, very small dx or infinitesimal dx, the number of lines, my question is, if I put dx here, would the number of lines change crossing this initial dark line and the number of lines crossing this rectangle change if dx is very small? I think it
No.
was Vaibhav, right? You were asking this question. Yeah. So in case this rectangle is a big one, right? In case dx is a large one, you would have lines like this, which did not cross the initial line but crosses the rectangle. But if dx is infinitesimally small, the number of lines crossing the rectangle and the number of lines crossing the initial 0 to d line would be exactly same. Yes.
Yes, sir.
However, we know that the perimeter of the rectangle is 2d. Yes, 2d plus 2dx, but dx tends to 0. So 2d. And since everything depends on the perimeter, we come back to this conjecture which says that the perimeter of the line is 2d. Is this line of argument makes it more convincing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Perfect. So that's the point I wanted to make, because what we would be studying, probably not in this class, but probably from the next class onwards, is that we would be looking at these Poisson line processes for urban networks, right? And we would be looking at users connecting to base stations where blockages can occur in presence of vehicles present in the cross section. So it would matter how many such crossroads are there. So only blockages like this would impact. Such a scenario, which I had started to discuss in the beginning, although it's mathematically interesting, and certain insights we can gain from mathematical perspective as well as the signal level perspective, but this will not emulate the millimeter wave base station deployments in a correct way. Why? Because if you look at the top version or the plan of the network, what you would find is that these base stations will be deployed. So this is the plan of the network, so which means you're looking at from an aerial view, and these are the roads. Vehicles move in this direction, vehicles move in this direction, and the base stations are located here, and the users are located here. It's very unlikely that this vehicle, something like this, something like this, would create an obstruction in this link. Of course, it would create an obstruction in this link, but it's more like a two-dimensional scenario. But we will not go into details of modeling such kind of networks. But when will this kind of a link be broken? In case there are, let's say, cross sections, and a vehicle moves like this, and a base station is located here, right? So we will be interested in how many lines cross a given line, or how many roads cross a given road. So that's the practical motivation to look at it, and that brought me to saying this property. Okay. Before we move on, I have noted down this guy here, and using this, I will give you I think it was Swaradip who pointed it out. Using this, I'll give you a small exercise. So the exercise, or example, you can call it. Suppose or assume a Poisson line process of intensity lambda L. Yeah. The question is, what is the expected value, or on an average, or let's be more precise and say, what is the expected number of intersections within a ball of radius r centered around the origin? Okay, the question should be self-apparent. So what we are considering is a circle, which is something like this, and you have some lines passing through it, right? Maybe one more. Yeah. This intersection is outside that circle, doesn't matter. What we are interested in, this number of intersections here are 3. Okay, if these Poisson line processes are driven by a measure lambda L in the psi d plane, the question is, what is the number of intersections on an average, or what is the expected value of intersections? Okay. Why I mentioned this NC2 will be apparent if you try to calculate it. So I'll pause here for about 5 to 10 minutes. I would ask you to work it out on your own, and then we come back to the evaluation later on. Okay, so just take some time up till, let's say, 5 o'clock. So anyone with the first step want to help us with the first step? Follows a bit similarly.
So the first step would be the number of lines, which is
Mhm. So suppose there are n lines, something like that, right? So you would
Then,
have,
sir,
yeah,
uh,
tell me.
is it like it requires two lines to intersect to create an intersection?
That's true. What I was rather looking for is that you have, I mean, suppose if you have, let's consider one line. Okay. Like the previous nearest neighbor distance of the PLCP, let's consider one line and see how many intersections there are. As you correctly pointed out, it needs two lines to make an intersection, right? So suppose if I take a random line, this guy at a distance of r or x, right? It creates a chord of length 2 square root of r square minus x square. Yes. And the number of intersections it creates on an average, how many intersections does it create on an average? We just did it, right? It's the length perimeter of it, which is twice this distance multiplied by lambda L. Right? Of course, it's Poisson distributed with it, but I mean, we take an expected value of the distribution. I mean, the good way to do it is have some defined parameter y equal to 2 square root of r square minus x square. Yeah. And since the number of lines crossing it are Poisson distributed, you would have to average out on all possible values. So suppose there are, what is the probability that there are k intersections on this particular line? It is sorry, it is e to the power minus 2 lambda sorry 4 lambda L square root of r square minus x square 4 lambda L square root of r square minus x square to the power k by k factorial, where k goes from 0 to infinite on this particular line. And what you would get, and sorry, this is the probability distribution, and you take the average value, which means you multiply k. And you have done this exercise, I think, in the first or the second class of this course. The average value is itself the Poisson parameter, which means you have 4 into square root of r square minus x square into lambda L is the average number of lines crossing a random line located at a distance of x from the center. Of course, x can be anywhere between 0 and r uniformly. So you have 0 to r, 1 by r. Remember that this is the average number of lines present only in one line. Yes. And you have to take an expectation with respect. So suppose this is the thing, right? You have to do what? You have to sum this number over all k possible lines. Yes. And take an expectation with respect to that k. Does it make sense? So if this becomes xi, your I would go from 1 to and k, and you take an expectation with respect to k. Okay, what you would find out is if you find out the value of this integral, which is very straightforward. I think it has a very closed form, nice looking expression. But if you find out the value, let's call it v. So what you would be finding out, it's some function of v, which we calculate here, multiplied by lambda L times I think lambda L square or something, pi square lambda L square, something like this. It's a very elegant expression. But one thing which brings me back to the point which Saurabh was making, what we have essentially done is calculated each intersection twice. Do you get this point? So suppose there are two lines, we have calculated what is the probability. So suppose there are only two lines within a circle. We have calculated what is the probability that there is an intersection in this circle, which means we have accounted for such an intersection. We went to another line and we have accounted for this intersection twice. So what you have to do is whatever final value you have to multiply it with 1 by 2. Okay. Does it make sense what I'm saying, or it's something not making sense? What we have essentially
Yes.
done, Yeah, okay. So I hope these are some simple tricks which might, I mean, for the moment we have not even started to discuss wireless networks, right? But I think these are some interesting mathematical results which you might find, uh, of interest. So it gives me an opportunity to discuss with you another exercise, and I will tell you that it is not solvable. So exercise, okay, disappeared. If I ask you as a follow-up, what is the distance distribution to the nearest intersection from the origin, right? So you see what you have to do. You have to say that, okay, if my nearest intersection, I mean, we have been having such kind of activities for long enough. If what we will say that if my nearest intersection occurs at a distance of x, what I will account for, or what you will account for rather, is find out the probability that there are no intersections within a circle, right? So in this case, we have found out the expected value of this number. What you have to find out is the probability that there are no intersections in this circle, right? In that case, things become very, very tricky. Why does it become tricky? Because if you say that no intersections are there in this line, which is our example line which we have taken. So probability that if we condition on the event that there are no intersections on this line, it automatically means that there are no such lines. Does it make sense again?
So can you repeat once more?
Yeah. So what we have to do for this example too is find out the probability that there are no intersections within this circle, right? Because our nearest intersection occurs at the perimeter or the edge of this circle, right? Now to find out the probability that there are no intersections within the circle, again, if we start with the same methodology, which means we take a random line located at a distance of x from the center and find out the probability or condition on the event that there are no find out the probability that there are no intersections on this line, which is straightforward, right? Which is the void probability, which is simply e to the power minus lambda L times 2 of the distance, which is square root of this. But once you condition on this event that there are no intersections on this line L1, it automatically means that the remaining lines you cannot consider them to be independent of L1. So, which automatically means that there is no line L2 which intersects with it. Within the circle, by the way. It doesn't mean that they are parallel, of course. They can intersect, I mean, outside line L1. So, there are lines like this, for example. This is a
So
very,
maybe,
very, yeah.
so can we consider it like a case, at least there is no, at least, sorry, we can break it into two cases. Like first case is there is no line at all inside the circle, or second will be there is only just one line. So that can, I think, conclude this. Like if there is one line, there will be no intersection in the circle, and if there will be no line, then of course there will be no intersection.
Yeah, so that's currently what I personally do, and what you are saying is a bound to the actual probability, because if you try to find out by adding these lines, right? So we start with the probability that there are no lines, which means there are no intersections, of course. Then probability that there are no intersections given that there is one line, which is 1, multiplied with the probability that there is actually one line, right? Plus probability that there are no intersections given that there are two lines, multiplied by the probability that there are actually two lines. If you keep on adding this, the more terms you add in this thing, you get closer and closer to the actual value. But of course, you will not be able to get an end result by taking into account all these possible lines. Because if you go to cases 3 and beyond, things become very, very tricky. Okay, so as an example, if you take the case of 3, so I give you another exercise. Do not try this in the first attempt. Try this. Right, given there are 3 lines in a ball of radius r centered around 0, what is the probability that no intersections exist? Okay, what you have to account for, I mean, I'll give you an easier version, make it 2. What you will have to account for is, if you, even if you carry I mean, if you draw any random line at a distance of x, the possibilities in your psi d plane, we have defined a half cylinder in the psi d, so it may be going from minus infinity to infinity, the distance, and the angle from 0 to pi. So this is my d, this is my psi. So the possible places where these points can lie, which would correspond to lines which intersect inside this, finding those possible set of points becomes very tricky. Do this, send it to me over email, and then we can have a larger discussion on this. Okay, but the generic case is clear for everyone. What we want to find out the distance, in order to find out the distance distribution to the nearest intersection, we would have to find out the void probability of the intersections, right, which becomes tricky. Okay, I have spent too much time on things which were not really related to wireless networks. Let me come back, and there are 2 things which are remaining before we go on to modeling this urban propagation scenario. The 2 things that are remaining, we can cover it very quickly, is the probability generating functional of a PLC and the second thing, that is a line, or of a line which is randomly oriented line passing through a point located from the, should be very clear to you, because suppose you are one of the users and you have a Poisson line process, what you would be interested in is the SINR at the origin. Yeah, and you have to take into account all the points which are PLCP, which means all these points which are located around you. So and your first expression would have been giving you some exp of minus gamma n0, I don't know, p something, kp, right, d minus alpha. So distance becomes only to the nearest one. However, this term you would have to account for products of functions where I belongs to the PLCP. Right? So that's why it's important to characterize the probability generating functional of a PLCP. I'll very quickly write it, and since you have already done similar kind of evaluations, it becomes easy to explain it. So what we will start with, let Vx, what we are interested in is the probability generating functional of this function V, or new, let's call it, evaluated at points x, where x belongs to the point process, product of it, and expected value of it. So let Vx be a positive, measurable, symmetric, I mean, all the things are okay. I mean, regardless of wherever you go in the angular domain, it's the same thing. So let us assume that we have a ball of radius r, and this function in our case is would be some form of a signer coverage probability. So what we want to find out, so this is a function. Okay, does it seem to work? Okay.
Sir, actually, your voice is also breaking in between.
Okay, I think the internet doesn't seem to work. So let me just, since there is 10 minutes, it's enough time to discuss this. So let me just quickly restart my system. Okay. I don't know what happens at the end of these classes. Just give me a couple of minutes. Okay. Okay, I seem to be connected again. Let me see.
So can you please go over to the last part again?
Yeah, just 1 second. Yeah, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you want me to come back to this point? Which one? This one?
Yes.
Yeah,
No, the second part.
yeah.
Yes.
The probability generating functional.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Yes, you have a question in this?
No, sir. Actually, your voice was breaking, so I couldn't get
Yeah.
the
Okay.
part.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't get it. So I was explaining that in, I mean, as you, I don't have to tell you more number of times this thing that the probability generating functional or some form of it, like the Laplace transform, is an essential component in order to get the signer coverage probability. So if a user is located at this origin, and in this case, if I call the base stations to be located along the roads, what we have to find out is the probability generating functional of the PLCP, right? And the evaluation looks similar. What we have to find out is basically, okay, so my pen again is not working at all. So what I can do is try to explain you from a PDF. Okay, just 1 second. I don't know what happens after 1 hour of this thing. Does anyone face similar issues, or does anyone use this? What do you call this surface thing?
So maybe it is because of the network, because your voice was also breaking. So maybe it is because of the network.
Probably, but the touch screen seems to not work. So at my end.
Okay.
So don't know what happens, but there are other people also who have complained about the same
Or
thing.
is it charged?
Yeah, the pen is charged. But it happens after 1 hour of, I mean, recently I was giving a talk somewhere else and it was a bit embarrassing because during the talk itself, I couldn't explain what I was trying to say with the pen. It happens after an hour every time. Okay, nevertheless, let me share with you the entire screen and I'll use a PDF to explain it. So I stop sharing the application and share the screen. Right. So we have a paper. I'll share with you this paper as well. What we have to find out actually is the probability generating functional. As we know, and I have been talking about it, it is the expected value of a product of functions where the points are taken along the distances of along the roads, right? What it means is basically if your function is evaluated at that point x belongs to phi s is the PLCP. You have to find out the measure of the PLCP. What it means? It means that you take one of such lines. So if I scroll down, I have the condition for one of such lines. Yeah. So if I, it might be a bit difficult without the figure, but let me try to see if you can get it. So if I think about a line located at a distance of r from the origin, okay, right? So if you, what I am doing is dropping the perpendicular, right, from the origin to this line, and if I call that line to be at a distance of ri. Now, from the location where this perpendicular has dropped to the line, from that point along the line, if there is a point at a distance of t, that point from the origin is at a distance of square root of ri square plus t square. Is it clear or shall I repeat? Oh, it's clear already? Okay. For in that case, I will try to see if I can draw here. Yeah. So you have a circle like this, and you have a line like that, right? And you have another line which is the perpendicular from the origin to this guy, right? Now I'm saying that this guy is at a distance of ri, which means this line is at a distance of ri, which means the smaller line is at a distance, is has a value ri, right? In that case, any point, let's say this point, for example, if it is at a distance of t from the location of this origin, it is actually at a distance of square root of t square plus ri square, right? So this hypotenuse is the square root of ri square plus t square. So this brings us to this kind of evaluation where if you, and remember that such points, these circular points are Poisson point process in this line segment. Yes, and they are fairly symmetric. They are symmetric in the sense that from this location of this perpendicular, whatever, well, if there is a point at a distance of t in this direction, it has the same value for a point which is at a distance of t in this direction. So if I draw another point here, so both these points, if they are at the same distance from this location of the perpendicular where it dropped in this line, they are actually at the same distance from the origin itself. So it's enough to look at only one part of the line, and how long these values t can go. These values t can go from here to this part, and you very well know what this part is. So if I draw this guy, this is capital R and this is small ri square. So the line segment, one part of it is square root of capital R square minus small ri square. So what we have to account for is the probability generating functional of this one-dimensional Poisson point processes, where the function is evaluated at square root of ri square plus t square, where t goes from 0 to square root of r square minus r square. This takes into account the probability generating functional with respect to the points located on one line, right? So when we have that thing, which is the probability generating functional of with respect to one line, we multiply it. So this is the part we have, this highlighted part. We do a product of such things for all n possible lines, where the lines can go anywhere from 0 to capital R. We divide by capital R to the power n and average out on the possibility that there are indeed n such lines, which is, by the way, Poisson distributed with parameter 2 pi capital R. Okay. Here lambda R is lambda L, what we have been using. So derivation of probability generating functional of a PLCP, it's okay for you guys. I mean, at least the process of doing it. Of course, I will share this document, which will clarify it. I mean, in rigorous terms. But how do we do it? We take one of these lines, take care of all the points located along that lines, which, by the way, are Poisson point processes, and then average. I mean, it's similar to the derivations we have been doing. Okay. The remaining part is a bit tricky, which is the second part, which is the probability generating functional of a randomly oriented line passing through a point located at a distance of x. Which means, and why it is different, which says that if I am looking at a base station connected to my user is connected to this red guy, which is this base station. What I have to account for is all the base stations located along this line. Now remember, the evaluation is not similar because this distance d is no longer a perpendicular, right? My base station can be at any distance from the user. It's not necessarily located at exactly the perpendicular of the road that I am concerned with, right? So what we have to do is take into account the probability generating functionals of all such points located along a randomly oriented line, which is similar to this one which I have drawn, at a distance, at a given distance from the origin. So that's what we will be starting our discussion in the next class onwards. And why it is important, if we come back, did I discuss the palm probability or palm sense of this Poisson point or Poisson cluster processes? Sorry, Poisson line Cox processes? Maybe not, right? So we'll start with the discussion of this palm probability and this probability generating functional of the single line and move on to characterization of the entire network in the next class. Probably the next class would be the last one for this PLCP based network. Okay. Can anyone recall if I have already discussed the palm sense of this PLCP or palm probability of this PLCP?
No, sir.
No, sir, you haven't.
Okay. Do you remember what it was in case of Poisson point processes? When Slivniak's theorem said that in case there is a point present at a location of x, it did not change whether we condition on that x or not. It didn't change the statistics of the entire remaining point process. Okay. Here it is a bit different in the sense that if I tell you that my base station is located at a distance of d from me, which means this red x is at a distance of d from this black dot, it deterministically includes an event that there is a line passing through that red cross, right? That means although the remaining parts of the lines, which means this line and sorry, this point and this line and other lines and the entire PLCP apart from this base station remains the same, but in addition we have to condition on a deterministic line passing through that red x. Is the philosophy clear? We will go into the mathematical details in the next class, but is this part okay?
So for basic point process, you are conditioning on like presence of a point, right?
Yes.
And here we are conditioning on presence of a line.
No, so I understand your concern, but here also we are conditioning on the presence of a point, which is this red x point. Yeah. In the Poisson point process, it did not change anything. But in this case, it would change something, which is precisely that it will necessarily include a line passing through that point.
Okay, so yeah.
Okay. In both cases, we are conditioning on the presence of this point. If this red crosses were Poisson point processes, we would say that okay, this point being present at a distance of d or not, the statistics of all these other red crosses do not change. But here we will say that okay, this cross being here, the statistics of all the red crosses present on other lines do not change, but now there is a definitive line passing through it, and we have to take care of random points present on that line. Okay, this brings me to the end of this particular topic, and let's meet in the next class, where we will finish this Poisson line Cox processes and do the network evaluation as well, and move to a new topic from the next Thursday onwards. If nothing, we can close probably. Thank you, guys.